have a friend in San Francisco named Karen. She's decades older than me, but easily as active and busy as I am. I want to be just like her when I grow up. But then the pandemic hit, and she was diagnosed with cancer. That was a bad time to have to go through cancer. She looks back and says that was definitely not her favorite season. And during that time, both the cancer and the pandemic really slowed her down and seemed to age her in ways none of us would have expected. And then all of that started getting her down. And like a lot of people I know, she was really, really disappointed in her church during the lockdown. She had no trouble telling me that, as people always tell their pastor friends everything they're angry about their church. But she felt like a lot of the other widows and widowers like her and young adults who were living alone in the Bay Area, that they kind of got lost in the shuffle of their church during the lockdown. She felt like the church really wasn't keeping track of the people who lived alone. They weren't getting phone calls. No, certainly nobody was getting visits. It seemed like only the people who were in leadership or who were leading the online worship were connected. So as she started talking with some of her friends about this, friends who were helping her through the cancer journey, she found that many of her church friends were feeling the same way. And they did what people do. They got into a bit of a gripe fest. But I was really pleased one afternoon when she called me and said, last night we were having, online happy hour. Not so happy because we were griping about our church. When somebody said, we're just not living the Great Commandment. I mean, the church should be living the Great Commandment. How do we love our neighbor in the middle of a pandemic lockdown? Our church isn't doing this very well. And then somebody else leaned into the Zoom screen and said, we're the church. Maybe we should do something about that. And then they did. So Karen and her friends informally formed their church's first care ministry team. Their church doesn't have a care ministry team like the one that Reverend Debbie formed here. Nobody on their staff, it was a large church, nobody thought to do that. I think the pastors thought they were finding everybody. But this little group of older adults started making phone calls, started delivering groceries, started checking in to see who needed help, who needed companionship. And they continued to do this as the restrictions began to lift. And then whenever they came back to church, they found that their circle of friendship had expanded. You know how even in big churches, kind of people sit in a certain area. This group of friends, the area where they sat, got more and more crowded as the young adults and the older adults that they had visited, that they had called, that they had cared for, began sitting together. And these many years later, that care ministry team is still going strong because they realized caring for each other was the answer to their frustration. Paul talks about it as caring gently. We cared gently for you and ask that you care gently for one another, he writes, because he knows that when we care gently, it changes us. Caring gently draws us closer to this very philosophical great commandment to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. I love that those words got to David's heart. To love your neighbor as yourself. We say these things all the time, but how do we put hands and feet to that? Perhaps by caring gently. When our churches are feeling frightened, whether it's because of a pandemic lockdown or because of church disagreement or because of all the outside pressures or just the quickly changing world in which we're trying to minister, caring gently can calm out the divisions, can calm down our fears and reconnect us to one another and to God. As those fears start to calm down, then we can really sense God's Spirit as it called that group of friends in the Bay Area to form a care team God calls us to embrace whatever gifts we've been given in whatever time we are facing. And as we embrace our gifts, we're better able to love and serve and care gently, as God calls us to do. Yet it doesn't always work out that way, does it? I mean, when stress strikes, it doesn't always bring out the best in me. It can be hard to find that calm center. I can't say that I was always polite to everyone during the hurricane last weekend. I certainly didn't like it when neither the boxed breakfast nor the boxed lunch arrived. But then I remembered, I'm called to love. These people are caring for us the best they can in the midst of a really serious weather disaster. But when that stress strikes and we remember to care gently, to love kindly, then we reconnect with that calm center. There was a moment around noon on Saturday when we were in the eye of the storm. And it was very interesting because we'd all been told, stay in your rooms. If it gets even worse, go into the bathroom. That's the only safe place. Do not leave your rooms. Do not go outside. And they were right because things were flying. It was like that scene in Wizard of Oz, where everything's flying past Dorothy's window, except it was real. And then the eye came, and the sun broke out, and it was incredibly quiet because no birds returned. But slowly you would see many of us peeking out of our doors. We started walking the halls, checking on people, whose room was flooded, who wasn't. And a calmness came over the whole resort as employees came out and kind of kept us ushering back to our rooms. We never know after the calm if the worst is coming, so don't get out here roaming around. And yet, there was a connection in the midst of that calm care, where people were really venturing out to see if everybody was okay, to see if they needed help, who needed food, who had food in their refrigerators, who didn't. And some boxed lunches appeared, and we were all greatly relieved. That calm center changes us. And I believe Paul's advice to care gently, particularly in the midst of crises, can help us find that calm. Be not confused, the church in crisis is nothing new. The Thessalonian church had endured a number of attacks in its early history. This would have been, not quite 2,000 years ago, about 1900 years ago, because they were one of the later church starts. And later in their history, they were under attack first for being Jewish, then under attack for being Christian, and then under attack for including the pagans, because the Gentiles, even who'd converted to Christianity, were considered pagans, like you all in costumes, just saying. So every time the Thessalonian church would kind of get its feet under it, another group would be kicked out of Thessalonica, and part of their church would be kicked out of town. And then a different group would be kicked out, and the other people get to come home. And every time, you can imagine, this was a church in crisis, because it's like, where are my friends? And now there's a bunch of strangers that I thought were enemies, and, oh, wait a second, now my enemy is my friend. And it was a very confusing time. It was a church under great stress. And in that situation, these words remind us of this truth. Caring gently for one another doesn't just connect us with each other. It connects us with God. Caring gently connects us with that calm center that we all need in the midst of life's storms. It's what happened with Karen and her friends when they realized we are the church. We could do something about this. Loving God and loving your neighbors yourself, it makes for a great bumper sticker. It's certainly better than the bumper sticker I just can't stand. I love humanity. It's people I can't stand. Wow, I just don't like that bumper sticker. But anything you can put on a bumper sticker can become just philosophical. Caring gently is putting hands and feet to the call to love. Think about the times when you've known someone to care gently. A parent or a grandparent soothing a colicky child, or holding a young child who's just had a nightmare, no matter how tired the parent or grandparent. Caring gently. Caring gently like that spouse who sponge bathes their loved one in their last days on this planet. Caring gently. Like the friend who holds you steadfastly as you cry over a broken heart. Caring gently. Like two lovers who slowly caress one another's back as they hear the news they never wanted to hear. Caring gently. Bringing a meal to someone you don't even know because Pastor Debbie called and said, somebody needs a meal, can you help? Caring gently. Caring gently brings love to life. It puts hands and feet to the great commandment. And when we care gently, our community is strengthened. We can start healing one another's wounds. We can start mending our hearts. And Christ's love can shine through like that sun shone through in the eye of the hurricane. Showing our love by caring gently, consistently, it changes people. It heals people, not just others, but ourselves. I watched Karen and her friends heal themselves. Their frustration just dissipated. Their fears went away. Whereas they had thought, our church is never going to make it through. They became proud. Our church is growing. Our church is strong because we cared for one another. Caring gently. It's that love, like that silly little song we sang earlier this month, The Magic Penny. It's a reciprocal thing. The more gentle care we give, the more we get back. The more gentle love we share, the more love comes back to us. And the more this happens, the more we experience God's love and care in tangible ways. No magic penny needed. Just the gift of caring gently, loving consistently. Recently, my friend Karen, as if she didn't have enough having survived cancer and a pandemic, she got hit by a delivery truck. And, you know, in San Francisco, that's not a good scene. And she really about gave up. She was like, really? I'm homebound again, this time because my body won't move right. And of course, her car was totaled, so she didn't have a car to drive. And she was pretty afraid, like, do I ever want to get in a car in this city ever again? But then that group of caring ministers surrounded her. They started taking her to her doctor's appointments. They got her back to the DMV and helped her find a car, got her driving again. And now they're back to doing happy hours in person, delivering meals, helping people at church who need visits to the hospital, and most importantly, gathering in their little corner of the sanctuary every Sunday. All because her friends came around her with gentle care, as once she had helped them come around their church with gentle care. And that gentle care calmed her fears, increased her confidence, and reconnected her with God and with the way in which God's love lived in her. No matter how deep our fears, my friend, no matter how difficult the tragedies, No matter how high the stress, God's love is enough. But caring gently helps us connect with that love. So let's care gently for one another. Let's care gently for our children. Let's care gently for the strangers. Let's care gently for our enemies, who may actually be our friends in disguise. Let's care gently and show the world what it means to bring God's love to life. Amen.